Grandmaster Carroll Baker, how are you, sir?
I'm doing incredibly well, a lot better than I should be.
So for many of those who may be tuning in, may know you and know who you are, but there's probably a lot nationwide who don't. For me, you are someone who's been in and out of my life, mostly on the fight spectrum. For my days way back when we first started training and didn't know what the hell I was doing. And you're a world-class trainer. You've trained multiple people in MMA, boxing, kickboxing, karate, full contact. I mean, in a nutshell, let's just talk about, how you got into that before we go off into our tangent on each other, I guess.
Well, I was part of a low-income program that Shreveport offered at the Salvation Army Boys Club. And for $1 a year, a school bus would pick us up at Claiborne Elementary School and take us downtown to the Boys Club. And you could do anything there for that $1 a year. And I was looking for the trampoline room, and there was a girl giving us an orientation to it. A bunch of kids, I was 7.
Okay.
And this is 1959.
Okay.
And I said, I have to go to the bathroom. So I went in. When I came out, she said, we'll be in the trampoline room. When I came out, there were 2 doors. Both the words started with a T, and I couldn't spell trampoline. And the other word, I didn't know what it was. And so I opened the door, and it said Tae Kwon Do. I found out later. And when I opened the door, there were these 6 adults dressed in these pajama-looking things. And I'm 135, 136 pounds. I mean, you cut my arms and legs off, and I could roll.
Oh, so you're okay. So you're a fat kid. Okay.
I was a fat kid. And this is 1959. I'm not endorsing anything that I'm about to share with you, but I'd like to share with you how it molded my life. There was a black guy there teaching the class from Barksdale Air Force Base. Back in the day, blacks rode in the back of the bus, or the trolley, we called it, and the whites rode in the front. There were some restaurants blacks were not allowed in. Some they had to go in through the back door. And if they saw you, even a kid, it could be a 70-year-old man who's paid more dues than I'll ever pay, and I'm 7, but instead of saying, how you doing, Carroll, it was, how you doing, Mr. Carroll? It was always formal. Well, somebody forgot to tell this guy that, okay? And so he looks over at me, he said, you're late, get in line. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm late for what?
Yeah.
So at the end of class, I go through the class with everyone, and he kneels down in front of me. He's bowed up. He's built a lot like you. He's got a big chest and shoulders, and you can tell he definitely trains every day. And he kneels down in front of me, DJ, and he said, son, you have so much potential. And it changed my perspective of who I was and who I wanted to become. Now it was a matter of what dues I was willing to pay to become that person, and changed my position racially. He paid me a compliment.
Right.
And he talked to me on the same level. And years passed, and I'm 7 at the time now. Fast forward, we moved to Natchitoches, Louisiana. There's no martial arts school, but I had a classmate who was in judo. And so we would go out by the baseball diamond. We'd work on judo. We had 2 recesses, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Then we had a lunch break.
Okay. And what year was this?
This was, let's see, 62.
Okay, so 3 years in.
Yeah. And so we're there for 2 years, and that's all I do is I work on my boxing and the few kicks that I had learned from this gentleman, who was not, by the way, qualified to teach, but he loved teaching and he loved people. And whether you believe in angels or not, he was put in my life and made a difference in my life.
Right.
So, and I believe that people happen, whether, and I'm going to use this loosely because I don't want to offend any of your listeners, but, some people will tell you, God puts people in your life or circumstances in your life, and that's how I looked at it. Mm-hmm. And I just kept training and came back, and I got with General Pat Harrington, who his wife and he went with my mom and dad to elope. So Pat Harrington was a local boxer. He boxed with Irish McNeil back when Irish McNeil was a young man. They were about the same age, and he was the cruiserweight Golden Glove champion. He's an amateur boxer, 5'7", 190, and no neck. Traps. His earlobes rested on his traps.
Yeah.
Kind of had little man syndrome to a degree. Had hundreds of college hours, but he didn't study for a doctoral dissertation or anything. He loved learning, and so I stayed with him and got to work with Master Takayuki Mikami through him. Gishin Funakoshi is accredited with founding Shotokan Karate. Okay. His son, Gishin, also Funakoshi, and then there was Takayuki Mikami. So I got to study with third generation of the rock of the entire thing. And Shotokan is a very interesting tale, how it came to be, and we'll do that another time because it's a long story.
Okay.
But it's very fascinating. Shotokan was never intended to be a style. Shotokan means house of or way of the leaning pine, and Shoto was Gishin Funakoshi's pen name. He was an author of Chinese character, and long story. Anyway, it's very interesting how it came to be. And so I continued that, and then along the way I met some Koreans and got selected to train under Master Junhee Song, who was the guy. He was out of Atlanta. I used to drive weekends, one way 13 and a half hours to Peachtree Drive in Atlanta, which is, Peachtree is got to be one of the longest streets in the world, I think. And his wife had a little dress shop in a shopping center where she actually spun the silk, had silkworms and the whole build. And so when you walked down some steps, there was barely enough room if you had broad shoulders at all to fit down the steps. You would walk in this room, and there's this white wall, pristine white wall. And I looked at it, and I realized it was not a wall at all. It was a curtain, but very, very thick. And you push the curtain back, and there's the dojang, or the dojo, or the kwan, whatever you want to call it. And it was super cool, white bags and mats, and it was like a Bruce Lee movie, come alive. But this was before Bruce Lee. And he had this big vase that was black, and in the vase were these white stones. They were real smooth, and that's where he drove his hand in, his spear hand thrust to condition his fingers.
Okay.
And he's the only person I've ever seen that could take a glass. They used to have a 6-ounce glass Coke bottle, and he could, what's called a suto, or shuto, knife hand strike, and he could chop the top of the bottle, break the glass. I've never seen anybody do this.
That's insane.
I never could do it.
That's insane to think about now.
And so I got it really involved, and I started studying Korean medicine and working with the monks and the Grandmasters so that I could. Fighting never really interested me that much from a sport concept. I knew what I was capable of on the street, and that was enough, because back then MMA didn't exist.
Right.
And Muay Thai hadn't really hit here well, so it was just kickboxing. But people had, fast forward 5 years, and all of a sudden the Bruce Lee movies are out, so they believe, if you do that, you kick somebody one time, they're going to die.
Yeah.
Well, not the case. So you couldn't get insurance for kickboxing. At the time, the only place that we knew of was in Denver allowed it, and then Atlanta. But it was if you had to prove neglect to get a claim. So if somebody broke your nose, if you got it broken in the fight, you knew what you're stepping in the ring for. So
okay.
Don't mind.
Yeah.
But if it's neglect, if you trip and break your nose because the steps are faulty, that's a different thing. So I started in 59 and later became with the International Tae Kwon Do Association. I was the highest ranking, Caucasian in the world, and trained, as you mentioned, 20 national and world champions from various combat sports. And I guess the most talented person I ever had was a guy named Robert Mongoose Visitacion, And Robert was named Kickboxer of the Decade for the 1980s, which was the most turbulent. Those were the best fighters in the world. That was Johnny Terrio, Bill Wallace, all the guys. And Robert was a super talent. And his career, just from observation, launched people like Keith Bass and Donnie Aaron and Ricky Hutchinson. And these guys went on to win national and world titles. And, of course, Charlton Young was the predecessor to even Robert. And I've just been so blessed to have, I've always said, I'm the most blessed martial arts instructor that ever lived. You know, I've gotten to spend time with you. I've spent time with Donnie Aaron and Danger, and I'm still currently working with Primetime Tony Kelley, who is just my heart.
Yes.
And Andrea KGB Lee, who, not biologically, but she's my granddaughter.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're my family. And and I'm involved in the UFC and through them. And it's, I was through, you know, I'm 70 years old. I was going to retire. I'd been retired for 7 or 8 years. I was just working with people who had problems, that didn't have money or didn't have insurance, but they needed help, whether it was addiction or attempted suicide or just a criminal background. I didn't want them to think that's all life had to offer. One of the saddest things in the world to me, DJ, is a young person without a dream. If you don't have a dream, what have you got?
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that you see every day. You know, someone lost. I mean, and you're not. I mean, here's the thing: it's different to decide what your future is going to be, you know, in your middle teens versus not having anything to look forward to at all, or not shooting for something, right?
Right. And you know, I've used you when I'm talking to people because you've always been that overachiever. You know, you're going to go to college. You're going to fight. I mean, you stepped in a cage or a ring 15 times yourself, you know, from a boxing and MMA. You did your thing. But you were always at the gym. You always had goals. You've got a tremendous company that does really good work. And then you have your podcast, and you've got this incredible family now. You're just one of those guys that you don't know what it's like to not have a dream.
Yeah.
You know? And you grew up, you know, you had a single mom.
Yeah.
You had every opportunity to fail.
Yeah. That's something that's interesting because I don't really think I ever had a dream. Like you said, it hits home because I really don't think I ever had a dream. I just started becoming passionate with things, but I really didn't start becoming passionate with things until I wasn't aware of it until I was later, you know, later in life, like, you know, into my, you know, early adulthood, you know, when I met you, I was probably 18 or 19 years old, and I, you know, had seen UFC on TV, and I was like, this is cool. And I was in the oil field at the time, and I'd just been in the oil field for probably 2 years. And I was driving back and forth, passing this gym up, which was Karate Mafia, you know, where I met you, and where all those people came from that we have, you know, in our life. And I kept passing by, and I was like, I'm going to stop in there, because I was just lifting weights and drinking beer and hanging out, you know, doing the thing, getting too many bar fights and doing dumb shit. And I stopped in there one day, and I walked in. I was like, I want to do this. And I just remember I was probably 220 pounds and wasn't built as near as well as I am now because I wasn't dieting properly. I wasn't doing the proper things that my body was able to do. And I just remember walking in and Donnie saying, all right, let's go. You're going to fight at 185. And I just looked at him like he was crazy. I was like, man, I haven't been at 185 in 5 years, you know? It's just crazy. But then it just snowballed into all this, you know, all these people that I've come in contact with over the years, including, you know, you being, you know, the most prevalent one, I feel like, because everyone has come to pass with you, and you've had some kind of dealing in their life, you know, whether it be, you know, just coaching them through, you know, emotional hard times or physically training them or whatever it may be. I mean, I remember a seminar we had, you may not remember this, and you might, but I'm sure you've done a lot, but we had a seminar one time in the gym, and it was probably a few years into training, but we were all there, and I remember it was around Christmas time, and we all just sit down and connected, you know, and I don't think we'd ever done that as a team. Like, you know, we connected spiritually, I feel like. And I always tell people, I have this conversation with people, it's kind of like a fight team is similar to like those war veterans that never really had a family but then they become a family, and it's like you can never separate that bond.
Absolutely.
You know, when you lose one of them, you all come back together, and that's what brought me back into the game. You know, had we not lost Jeremy Moore, which, you know, was an amazing human being, one of the best guys I ever known, it wouldn't have brought me back into it, because I feel like it did, because I was so far away from it, and then it brought me back in, and now just it's everywhere now, you know?
Yeah. Well, Jeremy was and should be remembered, so I'm glad you brought his name up. He's a tremendous fighter, too.
Yes, he was an amazing fighter.
But just a wonderful...
Horrible nickname. He had the worst nickname, the Badger. But I loved him to death, man. He was awesome. He was awesome.
He didn't. Once he started, he didn't stop.
Yeah, we would trade in, because I feel like some days I'd come in and he'd have to work offshore or off, and he was on the oil field too, and he'd be like, hey, man, so-and-so's talking shit. You need to spar them. I got to leave. I just remember those are like, I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, you're his hitman, sort of.
Yeah, no, we played off each other well. You know, we were both kind of like, we didn't have 100% time to devote to it, because we had careers, and,
certainly,
you know, but we wanted to be a part of it, and he was, you know, much better fighter than I was, but just a great teammate, as well as everyone else there.
Yeah. Yeah, good daddy, good husband, and everything. But, you know, we've lost... You know, I've seen so many, you know, die over the years, and why I've been spared, I can't really tell you. I guess my job's not done yet.
Yeah.
But to go back to what you said earlier, the Karate Mafia.
Yeah.
Anybody that's done anything that has a victorious pedigree with them. I mean, there have been people that have gone places, but they didn't win anything. And but you have people, you know, you have Danger, Matt Schnell, you have Tony Kelley, you have Andrea Lee, you had Donnie Aaron there, you know, and it needs to be remembered.
Yeah.
There was so much potential there by the leadership that just was never recognized, and it saddens me, because the people that we're talking about could have been, would have been, should have been these wonderful things, and I still, to this day, if they ever want to come back and live the life of a martial artist, I welcome them with open arms, and I still pray for them. But when I think about Karate Mafia, there was always blood, there was always sweat, there were always tears, and you know, it was a real place. It was as real. It didn't have a name like some of the MMA places had, but there was no gym better educated than that gym, and I liked it, because while it had, you guys were all the tough guys, but martial arts was never intended to be thuggish or punk.
And we were definitely the outlaws.
Yeah. But by the same token, y'all were also respectful.
Yeah.
You respected the martial art as an entity, as a lifestyle, because like you said, that's how we became a family.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more important than family. And this is something you live by. You know, I will, at my age today, I will still fight for my family. I will die for my family, and if push comes to shove, I will take a life away from someone for my family, and I do not apologize for that.
No, I have the same creed. You know, it's. I know it sounds. It may sound, you know, a bit Neanderthalish to some people, but it just is. You know, it is who we are. You know what I mean?
If they're not what we are, if they're not as dedicated and loyal, they don't get it.
Right. And I think that, you know, and that's another thing. It's like when you have something like that, anytime you have like rival fight camps that hate each other, it's almost worse than like having a damn ex-wife. You know, it's like, because their hate's always there, but I feel like with rival fight teams, it's worse between those two. You know what I mean?
Well, it bleeds over. It's not in the cage or the ring or the mat. It's just they see each other out at a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, but we don't have a lot of that anymore.
No, we don't. But I just remember growing up in it.
Oh yeah,
it was bad. It was bad, you know, because I think that we didn't have the channels early on to fight outside of an area, so it was everyone fighting everyone, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, rival teams fighting each other, and there was no growth because the platform wasn't there now. But you know, it's different. You know, it's different now. Like you have your daughter, who we haven't brought up yet, but she's amazing, and you know, she's created a platform that's feeding fighters into these bigger promotions. And it's amazing that's finally happening for these fighters in this area. So I want to definitely talk about that and not forget to mention that, because it's super important to me, because I've seen so many amazing fighters crash and burn because inability to promote themselves, inability to market themselves, not knowing what to do, where to go, where to train, and not having the platform to advance to their potential, and then quickly having something take their eye off the ball and maybe they go the wrong path. Exactly. And we've seen that with a lot of people in our fight, in our past, and it's something that frustrates me. But what Amber's doing now is just amazing, as far as growing something like that and giving back to that community that I remember coming up in that was just like, shit, we can never get out of here. We're just right here all fighting each other all the time.
Well, she, sometimes you get things in your life that are just too big for an adjective, and that's what my daughter is to me. She's one of only 2 female MMA promoters. She also promotes Showtime Boxing.
Yeah.
And she's so good, but you're part of that team. You're an intricate part of that team. So you guys, as a team, as a family unto yourself, have given opportunity to people. I think about Lauren Thibodeau and some other guys around here. They're really talented. They could go do some things. And Tony Kelly's fought for her.
There's been
a young man from Marshall that's so good.
Oh, Derek Krantz.
Derek Krantz. I'm sorry, I had a senior moment. Derek.
Hey man, there's so many names. There's so many.
Derek is. He's just a world class guy. And then just to watch what she's done has just been. And she did it. A lot of people think, well, she did it on your name. Absolutely not. My daughter did this deliberately without me, so she could say she did it. The only thing that I helped in was getting her license. I told the commissioner. She had the green light from me. So it's hard to believe that I still have any clout at all after all these decades, But to go to her fights, they run. I've been a part of the UFC fights. They run every bit as smoothly as the UFC fights do.
That was another question I was going to bring up, because I haven't talked to it about any of the our fighters that's been on, because it hadn't been brought up. But that's another thing. It's like a small promotion, feeding into something or trying to create something with a lower budget in an area that's not as high volume, with a lot of more talent and a lot of sponsorship, it makes it extremely hard. So it's an uphill battle, and that's been always anything in this area: East Texas, North Louisiana, South Arkansas, Mississippi. It's like there's been a pool of amazing fighters. We've named a bunch already, and it's been so hard to get over that hump, and now it's here. So it's something and we can move on to something else. But I just did not want to get off this show without mentioning that, because I feel like I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to know her, and I'm really thankful to be involved with this. But it's awesome to see something finally happening in this area and promoting and feeding people and directing people where they need to go, instead of them getting lost in transition.
We all just picked up a new casino in Marksville or something.
Shows January 28th, I believe.
Yeah, January 28th coming up. That's going to be a good show from what I hear. Well, my daughter and my son-in-law are just remarkable people. John is. If I could sit in the throne room with God and design my son-in-law, I wouldn't change an eyelash on that.
He's a great guy, man.
I love him.
He's awesome.
Good provider for my grandkids and my daughter, and she can hold her own too. But there's just been so much, DJ, and I know your guests are your focal point, but I wish your listeners could spend time with you. You've been. I know we try to stay away from politics and religion, and I'm not trying to be religious, but
no, it's fine.
But you've been just such a blessing. This is the kind of guy DJ is for you guys that are listening and have never met him. If it's 2:00 in the morning and I have a flat tire, if I call DJ, I don't care where he is, he's got my back.
Yeah, and more than likely, unless I don't hear it. But yeah, if I'm awake, we'll damn sure figure it out.
But he's that guy, and I would do the same for him or his wife or his family. He's just a very dedicated individual. And this show, this podcast, he's bringing to you because not only for the guests, but he wants you, the listeners, to have subject matter that's interesting. So he has an array of topics and guests, and I think you have Tony coming on soon, don't you?
Yeah, I just need to get with him. We need to line up a date. But yeah, Tony's coming on soon. I just had to let him get his win in and out the way and celebrate. We'll get in here. I don't want to mess with that. I don't like that pre-fight.
Yeah,
I like to get it afterwards, so I don't, no distractions. I understand.
This is I've been a fan of yours for so long as a young man, watching you grow into be who you are today. I'm so very proud of you.
I appreciate it because that means a lot coming from you. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing in life, but I think we all are. I think I tiptoed in a lot of things, but there's been so many people that we mutually have in our life that I just think are doing amazing things, and I'm just proud to be a part of any of it. You know what I mean?
Me too. That's how I feel. I get to still teach. Andrea and Tony's kicks have come such a long way, and their balance and their striking. I don't know if you saw Andrea's. I'm sure you saw Andrea's fight, but those teep kicks, the solar plexus draws the hands down, and then the poor girl ended up, she walked out of the cage but was carried out of the building on a gurney. Andrea really did a number on her, and whoever Andrea fights, that's going to be the same result. And Tony, they were talking about Tony's fight when he fought Randy. He's a wonderful human being. Randy Costa's just a great guy. And I hope all of his dreams come true. He needs to be a model or a soap opera star. He's a good-looking kid, got $1 million smile. But first time Tony kicked his hand, even he didn't take a step forward. So we did thousands and thousands of kicks in this last.
And that's another thing I wanted to bring up. We talked about it briefly last time I saw you, but this is way before the fight. But it's like Andrea and Tony are such amazing fighters, and Andrea's always been able to bang, but Tony can crack. And I remember sparring Tony, and I was a good 70 pounds bigger than him, and he would whoop my ass. And taking all that skill and power, and then just fine tuning it, and then putting in the martial arts into it, and not only making it effective but beautiful at the same time. I think it's amazing what y'all are doing.
Well, thank you. He's I don't know if you saw, he missed with a spinning hook kick, but if he'd have landed, it would have been the end of everything. Well, Tony has come to me, and I love Tony Kelley, and Tony marches to his own drum. And he plays his own music, and he writes his own lyrics, and I love that. And he stands by what he does, and he backs. If he's wrong, he says, "You know what? I may be wrong on this, but I'm standing up." And I've not seen him be wrong yet. He's always been right. But he came to me and said, "I don't want to just be a fighter. I want to be a throwback. I want to go back to the samurai. I want to go back to that mentality, the watering warrior. I want to bring that old school mentality and respect and dignity and honor." And lo and behold, I've been teaching him meditation and guided imagery. I've been teaching him history. I've been working with him on outside of the cage body language and posture and verbiage, and conducting interviews, and elevating him to the level he needs to be. Andrea kind of fell into the same thing, but she kind of follows Tony's lead, and because she was originally came up as a black belt,
right?
And with the Masayama system, and Tony too, but she has become more traditional now than I ever thought she was. She's phenomenal to watch. Her technique's like watching dance. Tony even said that when she was doing we did about an 8-kick combination coming across the floor, and Tony, that was like watching a ballet dancer, and I couldn't have put it more descriptively myself. And it was absolutely gorgeous. I put a dime on the floor, and I said, your heel has to start on this dime, and you have to do a jump spinning kick, and your heel has to land on the dime. And we did it until she got it. So she was that thorough. That's how I was amazing. Taught. And we went in. I went in with some physicians and some nurse practitioners and some PAs and some physical therapists. And I came up in Tae Kwon Do and Korean Judo. And the strikers have always been on this side of the fence, and the grapplers have always been on this side of the fence. And you can't say one's better than the other. It's up to the individual, and it's up to what's presented before you. But there was never, you got rank in judo or jiu-jitsu, and you got rank in taekwondo or Shotokan or kung fu. But over the last 40 years, I'd been cultivating a thing through the International Taekwondo Association, which they would not allow. It's where I merged the taekwondo kicks with the Muay Thai elbows and boxing hands, along with basic 25 of the throws. When you go to Kodokan in Japan, and you test. There are 100 techniques you have to display. So I've narrowed that down. And at first it was jiu-jitsu, and then Dr. Kano came in, and he, by jiu-jitsu practitioners' philosophies, he cheapened jiu-jitsu because he narrowed it down. He was a jiu-jitsu guy as well, but in his mind, he was making it more effective, more efficient with less. So what we've done is we've taken those two worlds and we've merged it into a ranking system where you have to be able to grapple at this level and strike at this level and then merge the two together. And it's called American Martial Arts and Sciences, because I'm teaching not only the technique, but the applied kinesiology. Kinesiology is the function of a muscle. Applied kinesiology is the application of that function. What do you do? Where's the fast twitch fiber? And so you break down the anatomical chart along with the psychological and sociological aspects of what's going on, and you're teaching the whole person. Master Song was killed in a car wreck 2 years ago, but when I was his student, I'll always be his student. To this day, I want to say this. To this day, every morning, I have my morning prayer and meditation, and then I get up from that and I bow into him every single day. It's part of my prayer to be a better man today than I was yesterday, to keep him alive. But he used to say in his broken Korean, so forgive my impersonation here, in life is like a baseball. In a baseball, you go 2 out of 3 at the plate, you have a pretty good day. But in life, 2 out of 3, not so good. Your mind, your body, your spirit has to be one. Wherever you are weak, you create weakness everywhere. And the system that we've come up with applauds the grapplers, but let us teach you striking. It applauds the strikers. Yeah. Let's teach you the grappling. Yes. Of course, we have Wayne Knutson, Professor Wayne Knutson. I don't know how well you know him.
I don't know him well, but I know he's an amazing jiu-jitsu artist, and I know he has an amazing school, and he has a bunch of great students. I've met him in passing numerous times at the fights, and
Well, he and I have become really close. Yeah, surprisingly, because I'm so much older. I say surprisingly because I'm older than way older than his dad, but he's technically very, very proficient. But his ability to communicate with his students, what I've noticed, if there's 200 people on the mat, he makes each individual student feel like they're the only person in the room.
I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what you do. I remember vividly you coming up to me and giving me praise, and I was like, man, I suck, compared to all these guys in here. But you highlight everyone's strengths, and where most coaches or most anyone who's especially in a gym, you're so focused on fixing someone's weaknesses that you give them absolutely no praise for what they are good at. Right. But I remember saying, well, you have a really good hook, you just need to do this. Or you have really good leg kicks, but you need to work on your stretching because whatever, we need to turn those into head kicks, things like that. And I just remember thinking, shit, well, I'm just in here getting my own ass kicked every day. But I remember seeing you coming in the gym and highlighting individuals specifically on their strengths. Yeah. And then able to work in on their weaknesses in other ways. And I think that's something that's very, very rare in this art form, in this world, because it's just always what's wrong, we got to fix it, not what's right, let's play on that too.
Oh, that's exactly. I use the positive aspect of the technique as a springboard to segue into the criticism without being critical. It's more critiquing.
Well, I think that's something amazing too, that not only we're going to talk about martial arts, guys. I'm sorry if you get bored, for the people that may not be interested, but not only in just specific specified solo sport applications, but in life. You know what I mean? Having a mentor that can build you up and play on your strengths, all the while trying to help you focus on fixing your weaknesses as well, something that's extremely rare.
A lot of people don't understand. The words martial art means the art of war. The war is not between two people, and the battleground is not in the physical. The war is inside each of us to be the best we can be, and the more accomplished we become, the more humble and appreciative we should be. And by doing that, you negate 99% of the confrontations because you don't feel like you have to prove. And don't get me wrong, there's been times I've felt like I had to lay hands on somebody now and pray for them later.
Yeah.
And I don't apologize for that. But the vast majority of times I try to do the other. The battleground is in our mind and in our hearts. When our mind and hearts come together, the physical is quite easy.
Yeah, it's very easy.
And believe it or not, we have more things in common with people than we have in disarray with them. So when I address, I was in the bottoms talking to a bunch of black guys, and I was the only white guy around, and there's some big guys, and you could tell they'd paid some dues in life. You could look in their eyes and see they were angry and hurt.
Right.
But when I changed the subject to their grandmother, everyone softened.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you said that. Yes, that's a very good point. That's something I was supposed to. I brought this up before podcast, but I'm gonna mention this because holy shit, like I feel so connected right now. I was trying to figure out how I could relate to. I was gonna speak to a bunch of prisoners this morning. I haven't been in prison. I've done a lot of fucked up shit, but I never got. I've gotten away with it, or I got moved past it, or whatever. I have a past life. And I was gonna speak to these. That's since been postponed because of the COVID precautions we're having right now. But my first thought was, and I mentioned this briefly to you, is how do I connect with these people? I'm not in prison. I don't know what it's like to be in prison. I can't, I couldn't imagine being in a cell by myself. I would go fucking insane because I can't sit still, first off. Right. But secondly, I'm like, but I have been through hard times. I can relate to them and, growing up, less fortunate. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, one of my questions, and when I do have this talk with them, I'm sure it can't be recorded or anything, but this will be preface to that, is I was going to bring up, I was thinking, well, how do I relate to these people? I was going to bring up those things. I also was going to bring up, what do you think about? What is your first thought whenever you think joy? And most of the time, it's a family member or a loved one.
Absolutely.
No matter who you are, there's someone typically in your life that no matter what, you can flip the script and just bring full emotion to someone. And I said, well, that's going to be my starting point because we all have loved ones. We all have people we care about, no matter what your background is, no matter how much of a badass you are in the streets. Grandma will still kick your ass.
That's
what I mean?
That's right.
But I'm so glad you said that because I was like, holy shit, that's amazing that I'm just glad I'm a fraction of a wavelength of what you're talking about, of where I was trying to figure out where I was going to generate a message to those individuals.
You need to be sure and rebook that day.
Yeah, no, we're working on it. We're just got to, once these COVID precautions, but I'm just, go on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's why this is called frequency interrupted, because I'm bad about interrupting people.
No, you didn't interrupt. I wanted to get to that today.
Yeah.
And because you did mention it earlier. And I wish everybody that listens to your podcast could meet you, because that's what I was speaking to earlier. That's what I was addressing earlier. That's who you are. Anybody, I'm telling you straight to your face. I've said it behind your back more times than I can count. Any daddy, including me, and I've told you this, would love to have you as a son.
Well, I appreciate it.
I mean, you're that guy.
Yeah.
And if you can't be the son, marry my daughter, please.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be the best human being I can be.
You
know what I mean? And play on my strengths.
Well, I'm so proud of you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
And to address, continued with what we're just talking about, the grandmother situation.
Yeah.
You have been instrumental in motivating me. I'm going to start my own podcast in February.
Hell yeah.
And it's based on patients that I've treated. When someone comes to me for help in rehabilitation or psych or whatever, I'm a doctor of holistic medicine, integrative practices, and I have a PhD in philosophy with an emphasis on spiritual wellness. And they were never referred to as a patient. That gives them permission to be sick. They were never referred to as a client. It sounds like I'm trying to sell them an insurance policy.
Yeah.
They're referred to as a student. I'm going to teach them how to overcome this obstacle. And then from that growth, they're going to blossom further as a human being and be a better person. And I think the 5th or 6th podcast that I'm going to be doing is called Grandma. It's about an inner city kid. He he was horrible. I mean, there's no way around it. He was a cute kid, 16 years old, good-looking kid, great personality, but he just, if it was something to be done wrong, he was going to do it. He was going to break a car window just because. And I'll never forget, and it's in the podcast, it's a poem that, as I write poems or stories or songs about the people that I've treated.
Yeah, you share some of those with me, and I'm honored just to hear those, and I can't wait to hear you lay all that out.
I'm excited. But I stole a line from the kid. He said, I never knew my dad. And Grandma says that the needle took my mom away. She tells me she's in heaven, but I really can't say. And I thought, holy mackerel, that's a freaking #1 song. But I turned it into a poem, and it's about his grandma and how he would come in at 2:00 in the morning, and she would still be on her knees beside the bed praying until he got home, that he would get home safely. And he said, how many tears does she have to cry before I wake up? I said, well, your mom's gone, your dad's probably gone. You want to bury her? And from that, we grew into an outstanding young man.
Yeah.
And there are just so many different stories, and some are about addiction, some are about suicide. I lost my oldest daughter to suicide.
Yeah, and if you want to share that story, that I'd be honored. That's just wherever you're comfortable. But I just,
Amber had a big sister named Brandy. Brandy was incredibly intelligent, very gifted, just different gifts of the Spirit that would be hard to describe. And she had a little boy named Connor. And for some reason, I don't know why, she just decided she didn't want to live anymore. And I got a phone call. I was in a recording studio laying tracks down, and my youngest daughter called and said, Amber called and said, Dad, Brandy's dead. And DJ, I walked outside to get a breath of fresh air. I've been shot, I've been stabbed. I've been there too. And I've never been gutted.
Right.
I've taken some shots, but I've never been gutted. I got gutted. I dropped down to one knee, and I remember saying, God, I want to thank you for 25 years, 6 months, and 17 days. How I knew that was the exact time of her life, I don't know. For letting me have my daughter, because I found out what I've read about unconditional love. Now, you know me, God, and I'm a fighter. And I find resolve and answers in the finality of that. So I'm thanking you right now, and I'm asking you to forgive me, because over the next couple of days, I'm going to get really mad at you, and I'm going to challenge you to a fist fight. So please disregard that. Yeah. I don't think I'd win. So that'd be my first loss, and I don't want to go that way. But it was a tough time. But her son, Connor, who just left day before yesterday, is married to Nikki. Nikki won TBAs.
Okay.
And she's my granddaughter. She won the Muay Thai thing. She had one win by unanimous decision, one win by knockout in the tournament. And I love her just as she's my own blood. But he graduated nursing school a year ago last month. He's got one more year, I think, of practicing as a nurse. He's going to be a nurse practitioner like my wife, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. His mother would be so proud of him. And thank you for letting me talk about Brandy.
Yeah, of course.
She was quite a young lady. And to say I miss her would be a gross understatement. So what I do, to play back into what we talked about earlier about finding the good points, let's go back to you, the day I started your critiquing with a compliment.
Yeah.
I couldn't give Brandy that day what I wanted to give her, DJ. So I gave it to you. That's how important it was. You got part of my daughter.
Yeah, and that's something that I will remember forever. And that's something that's amazing in what you were doing. So that if you can't grasp, anyone listening or hearing that, you can't grasp the validity of that. I mean, you're just, I completely understand and sympathize, and I'm honored. And anyone else that you've touched, it's just.
Well, it goes on. I've got one of my students, I have permission to use his name, had a massive stroke, has less than 1% chance to live, as an actor, musician, director, producer, comedian by the name of Sinbad.
Yeah.
And on his 65th birthday, a couple of months back, he took his first step, and he took 65 steps.
Hell yes.
And I was there to, with him over the phone to motivate him, and he's very dear to me. His wife Meredith, and his daughter and his son. He's got a grandson and a new grandbaby on the way. I've been used. I'm a willing vessel, and I've been used to touch these people. And when people say things like, I was introduced at a function recently as a living legend, I don't know how that happened.
I said the exact same thing when I announced this podcast. I said, man, this is a legend, because you are to me. You know what I mean? And you are to so many.
Well, I've been so blessed. I've been able to travel around the world. I've consulted HBO, Disney. I've consulted the NFL on traumatic brain injury. I work with the Pittsburgh Steelers on closed head trauma, vestibular rehabilitation. I've toured with the USO. I've worked with Make-A-Wish Foundation, which was a double-edged sword. I mean, Jane Fonda called me, and they called me into Jane Fonda's ranch up at Santa Barbara, she bought a mountain and chopped the top of the mountain off, and has a beautiful place there with the softball field, and I think they called it Eagle's Nest. There was these two bald eagles on each side of the mountain, and they had nests, and they would just fly, and they were magnificent. And I got called in to speak for Make-A-Wish. These are terminally ill children. So they called me on Tuesday to go on Saturday. And when I got there Saturday morning, there were 12 children there. 3 of the children had died before I got there. So this was in July or August, and there would be no December. There was no Christmas.
Right.
And one of the greatest moments of my life, I'll share 2, but one of the greatest moments after I spoke to those children and got hugs, I had to walk around the side of the building because I couldn't hold it in anymore. I had snot and tears.
Yeah.
And I literally bumped into a little bitty man, 5'2", maybe 100 pounds, a little Jewish guy. And he said, "My name is Doctor," and he gave his name. "I'm a pediatric oncologist. I've been practicing for 50 years. The man had to be in his 80s. And his little bitty hands were so soft, but you could feel more than his hands when he touched you.
Yeah.
He grabbed my hands. He said, "In my 50 years of practice, I've never been able to give a patient what you just gave those children." Well, that was all I needed.
You really broke down there.
I was gone then. I'm surprised I didn't pee on myself. I mean, I went down to both knees and just, that kind of, you can't catch your breath. And the other thing, when most people think of me as a martial artist, and I've been doing it for almost 63 years. And it's not something I do part-time, it's something I do every day. Before I get to the story, I was supposed to have died Christmas Day, not this past, but the year before. When they told me I may not be coming home, I couldn't get up because I had tubes in every orifice. So I was lying on my back, working my hand techniques, because if I'm dying out being a martial artist.
Right.
Nobody's going to say I couldn't. And I've always said, if they ever say there's only one legitimate martial artist on the planet that can live at one time, it's me. And I'll stand and say that in front of anybody. And so that's how important that was. And I was called in one time. Now, we're getting into martial arts sciences now, the martial sciences besides the martial arts techniques. I was called in, I've told you this story, I believe. African-American male was driving an S10 pickup truck doing roads construction supervision. He was driving about 10 miles an hour or less, telling his crew what he wanted to do. At 18-wheeler, the driver had fallen asleep doing 72 miles an hour. That's what the speedometer was stopped on when the police got there. When they pulled the S10 out from under the 18-wheeler, it was 4 feet long.
Gosh.
And this gentleman was pinned inside, dead. Got him out, resuscitated him. On the way to the chopper, died, resuscitated him. On the chopper, died twice, resuscitated him. Got him to the hospital, laid him down on the steel bed, died, and they said, he's gone. The nurse comes running out. He's breathing again. Go back in. Long story short, they come in, and he comes in with his wife, and I don't know if his parents came that day. His wife came, and 2 attorneys. And they said, we hear that you do things that other people can't. And I said, well, I look at things glass half full.
Right.
And I said, in fact, I look at the glass 100% full, because it may not be full of water, but it's full of something else. So we're going to use all that to make the glass full. For 2.5 years, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, I work with this gentleman, trying to get him, because when you're dealing with a quadriplegic, he was a complete quad, which means from the cervical spine down, there was no movement. He could move his headset to dictate the chair, blowing a straw for speed. But what a quad wants, what a quadriplegic wants, is they want as much normalcy as they can possibly have. So when I spoke to him or anybody in a wheelchair, I always kneel down below them, so that they're looking down on me and I'm not looking down on them, because the world looks down on them.
Exactly. That's amazing perspective just to even start off that. Yeah.
And I've shown you what the flexors and extenders haven't I?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know the camera's probably couldn't pick it up, but there are flexors and extenders in your hand, in your forearm.
I'll let you, they can see the camera. Okay. I'll let you demonstrate.
Well, if he'll relax his hand, what you'll see is when I hit an extender or a flexor, I'm going to hit a flexor on this, you'll see his hand come in. And if I do it this way, it'll roll in. Now, if I go this way, it comes up. So what I'm teaching him to do bilaterally, which means with both hands, I'm teaching him to now do this. So then I would hit trigger points on the anterior deltoid just above the pectoral region, and this would clasp the hands together. So we got where we could clap. So now we put a cup in there. So now we work on elevation. So now he can drink through a straw.
Yeah.
So also he can eat a hamburger. Whoa. So he's starting to have a life where he was nothing in his mind.
Right.
Well, one day his parents are there, DJ, and I've told you this story, so for the listeners, I hope they can grasp this. I had him tilt his chair back, and his parents were watching, and his oldest son, and I said, called his wife by name, and I said, lay your chest on his chest. Because they said, you've taught him to eat and drink, we're so thankful. I said, no, that's what you think I've taught him. This is what I've taught him. As she laid her head down, her head on his shoulder and her chest on his chest, because she was a tiny little thing, I said, go through the exercise. And he did. What I had done was I taught him to hold his wife again.
Right. Man, you're going to make me cry again.
So
no, that's powerful. It really is. The first time you told me that story and you were reading a poem about that too, I just about broke down. But it's, man, it's...
That was in my almost 63 years as a martial artist, that's my greatest moment. And I've had many world champions and people I mentioned like Robert Visitacion and Andrea Lee, Tony Kelley, all these people, Keith Bass, all these, Charlton Young, and a guy that came up by the name of Johnny Spinks. Johnny was, oh my God, if anybody should have never made it, it was Johnny, and he was 20-0 with 20 knockouts, prison ministry for 28 years, led 1 million people to God. And for those of you that are atheists, please don't turn off. I just was making a statement about that. Just a remarkable man, and out of Dallas, Texas. But in saying all those things, helping that man, watching that man hold his wife, and since he's not here, I'll tell you the rest of the story. You try stimulation for blood flow and things like that. Well, one of the primary areas to get a response is genitalia.
Right.
So I didn't show them, but I told them what they needed to do.
Right.
And I said, if things function, then I want you to take advantage of it, which would mean the female would have to be on top.
Right.
And they called me. No, they came in the next day. He wasn't supposed to come in. They came in. They drove in an hour or 2 hours just to see me. And I said, well, tell me what happened. She said, well, I did what you told me to do, and it worked. So I jumped on that sucker. And I said, well, good for you. And I said, I'm not going to ask you how that made you feel.
Yeah.
Which I said, and the guy said, well, it only lasted like a minute and a half. Yeah. And she said, that's 45 seconds longer than you lasted before the accident. You know, so they were able to laugh.
Man.
So, DJ, if I've ever done anything that's helped anybody, anybody, I promise you, there's no way I could have given you or them what you all have given me.
Well, you know, there needs to be more people like you. There really does. You know, it's just something that I think I've learned that, and I've had this conversation with my wife because she's like, how did you go from being such a dipshit to getting your shit together? You know, just in aspects of life altogether. And I'm just like, look, man, I don't know. I try to become more selfless and less selfish, but I think it's very hard for people, you know, and I'm still selfish for a lot of reasons. You know, a lot of shit's still not perfect, but I feel like that the more, you know, and you mentioned, you know, to anyone who may offend about God, you know, it's not about, at the end of the day, like, I want to keep an open book here because I don't want anyone to be turned off based on someone's belief. It's the bigger message, right?
Right.
If you do good shit happens.
That's right.
And if you do bad shit happens. At the end of the day, any religion will put that on a pedestal. Yeah. You know, no matter what your belief is. And it's like, the more bad shit you do, the more bad shit just keeps piling up. But if you can just slowly outweigh the bad with the little good nuggets, it eventually starts, you know, giving back somehow, you know. And it's never about money or anything else. It's more about pure energy, I think, you know.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you're a living example of that. You could have gone the other way.
Hell yeah, I had plenty of opportunities to go the other way. All I needed was one little nudge because I was on the line.
Well, there were some things that you said you're going to speak to these guys in prison. In some situations, you just didn't get caught. They did.
Of course, that's exactly what I'm saying. There's where I can relate. You know, some situations, yeah, it's like I didn't get caught, but I've definitely been there. And now, what are the reasons why are you back? You know, why are you? Because we're institutionalized. These people are institutionalized, and not we, but the system to where they don't care what happens to these people, and there's no amazing system that really rehabilitates someone to get them back into the world and play on their strengths, like what you do for someone. You know, I think that's what we're missing. It's just, you know, everyone has something they're good at. I don't give a shit who you are.
Right.
Every one person has something they're good at, whether it's playing fucking video games, you know, shooting a basketball on a hoop, or painting something, you know. Yeah. You know, everyone has something, and if we can just figure out how to play on those things and just let those other things wash away, you know, I think that's the bigger picture.
I agree 100%. And a lot of the times when we do these things, and part of our martial arts training is the yin and yang, you know, and you have to understand when you've done something that you're ashamed of, you feel like you're not worthy of being forgiven. And so you walk into a situation where you don't expect people to forgive you because you don't forgive yourself. So if you believe in a higher power, whatever you call that,
yeah,
that higher power has the ability to forgive you beyond you.
Yeah.
So unless you're such an extreme narcissistic, grandiose personality, you realize you're not bigger than that other higher power.
No.
So if that higher power can forgive you, who are you not to? And mankind that won't forgive you, don't worry about them.
No.
They're hiding their own junk.
I think the easiest black and white example of that is, you know, just going up into like the mountains and looking down, or having an amazing, huge structure right beside you at 10,000 feet that's another 10,000 feet tall, and realizing how insignificant you are. You know what I mean? Like, there's something so powerful that I felt over the past few years visiting places like that, that makes you realize that everybody does messed up shit. At the end of the day, you're not perfect. You're never going to be. But, you know, if you can just try to focus on doing things better. But at the end of the day, everyone has their own problems, and they're not caught up on what yours are, and you're not that significant. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. It's negative but positive. It's like, no one cares, but at the same time, like, you're not that big of a deal, no matter if it's good or bad.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at.
Exactly.
That's a weird analogy, but that's just how I think of it, and everyone processes everything differently. But for me, it's just like, So what if I've done bad shit? So what if I do good shit? Well, bad shit never got me anywhere, so let's just focus on the good stuff.
Well, I had a lady that you mentioned, the mountain, so it came back to me so vividly. She came to me just for a women's class I was teaching. And she had just lost her husband of 35, 40 years. And, you don't know how to function but half your life.
That's
in
a
that.
life partner.
And she went mountain climbing. I mean, mountain, not hill. And somehow she had service, and she texted me from the top of a mountain, and she said, I just wanted you to know, because I told her, one day you're going to reach the top of the mountain. One day you're going to reach the top. I was speaking metaphorically, but she texted me, she said, I'm on top of the mountain you told me about, both physically and metaphorically. Yeah. And I'm looking down at all the things that seem to be such big problems.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
And I can't even see them.
Yes.
So
exactly.
I'm just augmenting what you were saying.
Yes, that's, you say it way better than I do. But yes, no, I completely, that's it. I mean, this is like, those things are so insignificant to the bigger picture. You know what I mean?
Well, and I hope by listening today that people understand that martial arts is much more than kicking or punching or Haraigoshi or Ipponsi Anagi or Kimura. It's a lifestyle, and if you'll give it a chance, even the MMA guys, I wish they would give it a chance to be more than just that. When you're when you're at the UFC and you're in the back, you're sharing a large dressing room with 4, 5, 6 other fighters, and there were coaches in there that are world-renowned coaches, and I'm not going to mention any names, but the technique that was being taught was as bad as I've ever seen. Okay. It was as incorrect as I've ever seen. And it's because it's just about getting to the point.
Exactly.
Just throw this and then take him down. Or exactly. And I wish they would let martial arts be everything it could be to them.
Yeah. Speak to the journey, not the end goal. You know what I mean? Like, what about cherish all that in between and figure out what makes that flow? And that's funny you brought it up. There's something that you were in Tony's corner that last fight, which is just a month ago. By the way, Tony did a great job in that fight.
Didn't he do good?
Beautiful. And you told Tony in his corner, you're like, you're the best in the world. You're the best in the world. Hearing that, it's not, it's different on that platform, but not only that, everyone else hearing that. It's like, even Joe Rogan mentioned it in the post-fight commentary. He said, your corner was saying, you're the best in the world. And Tony was so hyped up, he didn't really, go into the answering that question. Because, he just want to fight out. It's hard enough answering any kind of interview when you're on endorphins.
But he also, when Joe said that, he said, your corner kept saying, who's the best in the world? And he thought Joe was asking him, who's the best in the world? Right. And he said, I'm the best in the world. Right, exactly. He thought Rogan was asking him.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. I knew there was but what I was, but that, you were saying that, that's what it was, you were asking him. And it's like, I don't know. It's just the coaching patterns and what everything's just to the point and it's a job. It's not. It's just beautiful what you guys are doing. It's beautiful. It's you're appreciating the entire journey, not just looking for the end goal.
Well, I don't make anything off of Tony and Andrea financially. So, and there's nothing wrong with people that do. It allows us to have a completely different relationship. Yeah. Because I'm as you know, Andrea's history, she has some really bad stuff.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And I was there through all of it. Mm-hmm. And so the fights she has now are like eating a cupcake compared to what she's been through. So she and Tony, I have 2 fighters, and that's all I'm interested in because they're not just they're martial arts students to me that happen to fight. Master Song used to always say, "You fight us. A monkey can fight." That's what he used to always tell me. Monkeys can fight. And I'm thinking, yes, sir, they can. But where's your technique? Where's your humility? Where's your honor? Where's your integrity? Where's your appreciation? He used to always say the one emotion we don't give enough of to one another as human beings is to be appreciative of one another. Mm-hmm. What do you, like to address what you just said, what do you appreciate about this person? Well, he's overweight, he doesn't bathe, he doesn't brush his teeth, but my Lord, can he play a video game?
Yeah.
you know what? Let's appreciate that. And if we use that as a catalyst, then we can say, okay, well, why don't you brush your teeth and I'll come over more often.
Yeah.
And then we'll teach you about showering, and then we'll change clothes. And oh, by the way, I'll get you on a workout program.
Yeah.
That's the way I address people with addiction that come to me.
Empowerment.
Yeah. I'll take them and say, okay, we're not worried about your drug right now. Here's what I'm worried about. I'm going to teach you how to throw a jab. This is a 1. This is a cross. This is a 2. This is how you throw a 3. And here's the weightlifting. Here's the anaerobic. Here's the aerobic. And the next thing you know, that crystal meth doesn't taste the same.
Yeah.
The thought of it doesn't get you excited anymore. That 1,000th rep on your abs, the excitement now. So if we have to transfer addiction for addiction, I'll take that transfer. And I use that's what martial arts is. It's you're being a chameleon. Mm-hmm. If I'm dealing, I've worked with a guy that owned multiple car lots, billionaire. I've worked with people who were leaving where I was to go back to, and this is not an exaggeration, going back to a cardboard box under a bridge. They're treated exactly the same.
Yep.
Because this guy just buys better dope than this guy does.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's still just as much an addict.
Exactly.
And I'm not gonna turn him away.
No, I mean,
so that's what being a martial artist is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that your overall outlook on everything is just look, this is the first of the year. Everyone's about their New Year's resolutions and shit. I didn't want to talk that much about working out and getting everything in line and dieting right, because we talk about that shit a lot. I've had multiple people on that, just that's their expertise. But it's more about getting your mind, your body, and your spirit aligned. And I feel like you're the professor at that. You know what I mean? Well, but at the same time, so here's another thing, because we've touched on these subjects. You don't drink, you don't do drugs, you live a very no smoke. You live a very, very healthy lifestyle. And how long have you lived that way?
I've never done those things.
Exactly. So what I'm getting at is, you just had a near-death experience last year. Do you think your willpower spiritually, and then a combination of your body being so sound of never doing those things, had something to do with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when I went in to see, mine was a urological issue, so I went in to see my urologist last week. He ran to me and hugged me, and he said, "My God, you're back." Because people don't realize when I take my shirt off, when I what's there.
Yeah.
When I put on a UFC T-shirt, I almost ripped the sleeves out. And it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Because I was dwindling. I was in the process of dying. My body was shutting down routinely. I knew, I wasn't going to be able to urinate. I was going to defecate on myself, and I was going to do what I was going to do, and it was not going to be very pleasant. I was hoping they would sedate me, mm-hmm. So that I wouldn't have to endure being a coward, I guess. Yeah. I didn't want to strangle on I didn't want to go out asphyxiating. But there was something inside of me that said, boy, this is going to sound wrong. I wasn't going to say that. I said, "You're Carroll Baker. You don't play this with anybody."
No. I mean, it's you talking to yourself. Who gives a shit what anyone thinks? Yeah. I mean, that's the truth.
I got to be me. Yeah. I wouldn't trade that with anybody in the world. Yeah. You think I'm dying? Let me show you what happens.
Yeah.
Watch and see what happens. And all of a sudden, my numbers started coming up. And the doctor came in and said, "Did we change anything?" I said, "No, this isn't you." So let's make it perfectly clear. This isn't you. You're practicing what you do. I don't have to practice.
Yeah.
I know what I've done. And so I know what the power of prayer is in my life. I know what I've been blessed with inside myself, mm-hmm. that I can draw on. And I just said, you know what, not today. Because there was a moment that I thought, what's left for me? I've done everything. I've been around the world. Yeah. I've consulted first families, White House. I've military leaders. I've done this thing. People who are in great power come to me to learn. So who wants to come to a 70-year-old papa to learn? Nobody. And so that's what I thought.
Right.
And so I thought, maybe it's time to just lay down. Maybe this would be the easiest time to do it. If I died at 85 or 90 or 106, whatever, maybe this would be the easiest time. And my wife is young enough and attractive enough she can remarry, and we've got a beautiful home, and we've got all this stuff, you know. And then I thought, where is this coming from? I don't quit. I don't know how to quit. So I just kept fighting, and I'm here now. And then the next thing I know, my phone rings, and Andrea and Tony call me and say, would you consider coming over and working with us? And I said, sure. So I went over and started working with them. So we're through Andrea's camp. So poor Tony had to go through Andrea's camp with her. He dieted with her. He trained with her. Poor Tony. And so we go through her camp. So now he's got to go straight into camp. Mm-hmm. So hers ends on, we get back on, they get back on Tuesday. Thursday, we're in camp for Tony. And he comes to me and says, I want you to take over the camp. It's your camp. You run it, I'll do what you say. And Tony doesn't do that for anybody.
No, I've never seen him do that. And that's just crazy. But it's amazing, you know. But
we work so well. I know him. Mm-hmm. And I know how to address him. I know when it's time for me to shut up and step back, let him have what he's got to have, and then undergird him and lift him up. And the thing about, and when you're in sales, they teach you to sell the sizzle, don't worry about the steak.
Right.
Is what I've heard. And so with Tony, no matter what your sizzle is, you can't outsell that steak.
Yeah.
That boy's a real deal.
Yeah.
If he stays healthy, and if the UFC will give him his just dues, give him the opponents that he wants, in 2 years he'll have that strap.
That's a good point. I think that it's great too what these fighters are doing. Like Sean O'Malley, for example, he's picking his fights, but he's not trying like everyone else to go get immediately pick that champion.
Right.
You know, he's like, well, I know I can. This will be a good matchup for me and a good test. And if they see me beat this opponent, then I know I'll be next in line for this opponent, and then eventually I'll get my shot. And I think that's great that that mentality seems to be working a little bit better, because it's like, everyone wants to fight the champion. That's the champion's job, is to get. Everyone's trying to kill him. That's the job. I mean, that's what you get when you inherit that title. You get that where everyone's chasing you. Everyone wants a piece of you, from media to someone trying to take everything out of your pockets to someone trying to take your belt from you. Like, that's what you get. So, jumping, everyone wants the piece of that. Instead of doing that, pick your battles and work up the ladder the correct way and the most efficient way. I think that's a good plan.
Well, that's the purest definition of grooming a fighter.
Yeah.
He's being groomed, and they're doing it absolutely right. Our manager, Dave, who manages Andrea and Tony, is doing the same thing.
Good.
I mean, is Sugar Shane on our radar? Yeah. 3 or 4 fights down the road.
Yeah.
Not that Tony couldn't beat him today. I think Tony could beat him today, but that's not in Tony's best interest.
Right.
We need to make some noise, and we need to get Tony's stock up a little bit, and then we get a payday.
Yeah.
And Dave's doing a wonderful job at this. He's a strategist. You know, while I do the strategy for the cage, he does the business strategies.
And that's what you got to have. You have to have a well-rounded team. You know,
and that's what we have.
Everyone playing.
And we've shrunk our team down to where it's just Professor Wayne Knutson, myself, and Tony training Andrea, or Professor Knutson, myself, and Andrea training Tony, or Tony training Andrea, whatever. And then from there, because I brought in a nutrition plan, and to be honest with you, Tony's nutrition plan blew mine out of the water.
I mean, that's just a full-on body awareness, and that's
he
good.
is there. I mean, he eats better than any human being I've ever met in my life.
They live in the neighborhood, and he came around the house for Halloween, and I was cooking this hog and all kind of shit. I was like, I know he had a fight coming up. I was like, I'm not even gonna, insult him by offering him any of this food. After he left, I was like, shit, I should have offered him some of this, because I was out there cooking, because the kids were running around everywhere, and I was like, I better not, because
he couldn't have been over 4% body fat at weigh-in. And Andrea, people didn't get to see her, but she'll train in Muay Thai shorts and sports bra, and she fights at 125. At 138, she was ripped.
Right.
I mean, she had veins coming at her that I wish certain body parts were.
Yeah.
She had some girth and some length, and it's like, holy moly! And she looked like she was fight ready then. And So we all bring what we bring to the table. You know, I bring technique and the judo, and Professor Wayne Knutson brings judo and jiu-jitsu and the ground stuff. And the beauty of the way we've done this is Andrea and Tony are strikers primarily. But when you have a jiu-jitsu game, a ground game, that's as solid as they're solid brown belts.
Yeah.
You get that ground game, it frees you up to strike more fluently.
Yeah, you get to pick your shots.
Yeah, because you want to take me down, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
submit you.
Yeah, you're right.
No
I'll submit you, or let's stand in this pocket.
If you can last 90 seconds with Professor Knutson, you can last with anybody.
Yeah.
The man's a wizard, and plus he says he's 6'2". Maybe it's his hair because he wears his hair kind of spiked. He looks 6'4", 6'5", and just a pure wizard on the ground. But so we're well rounded. All we have to do now is we're just sharpening now, and Andrea's 2 fights away from a world title, and
I believe that. I believe that, and I think Tony's right there too. I mean, I think that it's just he's got to have the fights, but it's like. It's very interesting. That's what, like, we look at Oliveira, who just, like, made a ragdoll to Poirier, and I was just like, gosh, Poirier had him. It seemed like the first round, but what I was getting at is Oliveira's been in the game since he was 18,
right.
or 20 or something like that. But a long time, long enough now to where he's gotten so good. Now he's just sharpening those skills and double down on what he's great, because he's an amazing. But he's been in the bullpen with these guys for the past 10 years, working on things that need to be worked on, figuring out what it is, and earning that right to a championship.
Right. And he has a great coaching staff and corner, and they did a beautiful job. And I thought Dustin just didn't show up.
No, I felt like he did in the first round, and then at the second it just trickled down. And who know, at that level, I can't speak to that. I mean, I almost shit my pants just speaking in a crowd of people, 50, so it's another level when you get that high at that elite level to fight someone. You have to be there mentally, physically, everything.
Yeah. Well, no disrespect to Dustin's camp at all, but I wish I could train him for that fight. I think what I could do with his kicks and his judo would reverse that decision.
That dude is still a beast.
He is a monster.
I remember him coming up and training with us years ago.
Yeah.
And just the dude would, gosh.
Well, he started out with Tim Crater.
Yeah.
Well, Tim Crater's first instructor was one of my students.
Okay.
Tim Crater's first instructor was Robert Visitacion.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And that speaks to how old I am.
Well, you versed in Kyokushin karate as well? Because I know that was something.
First in it. I never saw it ranked because there was no one around. And
because I mentioned that earlier on the podcast, I didn't give you your accolades for your Tae Kwon Do, but I knew you were well versed in that too. So
yeah, and the Shotokan background.
Yeah.
A front kick's a front kick, and a round kick's a round kick. It's just how well you execute it and how precise you are, and the decisions. I used to do a demonstration where I would. There used to be one of the original black belts over at Karate Mafia, was a guy named Russell Biggs.
Oh yeah,
remember Russell?
I remember Russell. I hadn't seen him in years, but
he's doing
great
so
kid.
well.
Great kid.
Doing so well. He's a paramedic or
I believe so. Firefighter.
Paramedic. Yeah. But I was doing a demonstration. I said, "No, here's a wasp. I want you to watch. When the wasp comes by, I'm going to reach up and I'm going to take only his head off. You'll see a little black dot fall, and you'll see his wings flutter, then you'll see the body fall." So I did what's called a finger flick, and I just took the wasp's head off, and the wasp flew right in front of him and fell. I said, that specificity of technique, that's how you know you're in control. When you can do that, then you got it. And I thought his mouth was like, holy mackerel. But when you train properly, really properly, not by today's standards, it opens so many more doors than just what the technique is you're doing. It makes like I used to do, everybody would do jump spinning kicks. Well, I did jump spinning kicks blindfolded in broken glass to let it penetrate my feet. And I would kick a grape off a samurai sword, or I would do whatever Master Song would tell me to do, just to show that I could do it. Because when I realized I could do that, then how hard could it be to get a PhD? That's nothing. You read a book. I didn't get my PhD in philosophy until I was 65.
Okay.
And I just wanted to do something to challenge myself. And I knew physically I had hip replacement, or I was having hip replacement, I had shoulder replacement. My prostate's the size of Houston, so you just, you do what you can do. So I went from, you go from the physical to the mental to the spiritual aspects of who you are as a martial artist. And I've been so blessed, not to be redundant, but to have, that Andrea and Tony thought enough of my knowledge to bring me in was a great blessing.
That was that's the last thing I was going to bring up when you finished talking about that, was that, you come right off your deathbed into a new year training 2 fighters on the largest mixed martial arts platform in the world, and then working on a podcast and writing a book all in the same damn year. So you're not even close to ready to give up yet.
and both my fighters won by knockout.
Hell yeah, exactly.
And just talked to Robert Visitacion yesterday, and he's I'm still claiming to be the most blessed martial arts instructor in the world. I can't claim to be the most successful or as far as wealth or anything like that, but no one can claim more blessings than I've had. Yeah.
Well, I think we've got a lot more to talk about, but I think we'll wrap it up on this one. And
I'm so thankful for having me here.
I'm honored and I appreciate it. And before we wrap up, there's going to be a lot of local guys listening and watching this that are local fighters and, guys from our past and new guys coming up. You got any messages or anything you want to drop a line to them?
Yeah, guys, please hold on to your dream. The worst thing is to have a dream and not give it 100%. Say you give it 99.9% and you lose a split decision. You're going to wonder the rest of your life. If I had done that 1/10 of 1% more, if I'd run that extra 100 yards, if I had done that extra crunch, if I'd done one more round on the heavy bag. Please don't give up on your dreams. I'm not going to give up on your dreams for you. If you're fighting, I'll come watch. Not that it means anything to you, but I'll be there in any way I can. Please, whether it's fighting or not, whatever, if it's getting an education, if it's being a better dad or being a better son or daughter, a better mommy, be the best you can be and know that you've given your all. That's one thing I can guarantee you. I will not die wondering what I may have been, because I know what I did. I know the dues I paid. I still train twice a day. Go out there and take what you want. You young fighters, seek knowledge. Make sure you're with the camp that's qualified. There are people out there that claim to be teaching that I don't know why they're teaching. And if you want to be a teacher, don't be so arrogant that you refuse to go learn from somebody who has true experience. If you want to be a teacher, go be that. Go learn. There's a student. You can't be a teacher until you've been a student.
Yeah.
So go do that. And there are a couple of places in town, but for the grappling stuff, SMAA is really, really top flight. The compound is here. There's several places that you can go, but make sure you get with somebody. What is their record as a coach? In my kickboxing days, our record was we won 89% of our fights and we won 82% by knockout. Mm-hmm. That's the highest anywhere, unless you had one fighter that had one fight and won it.
Right.
But get with somebody who can reach you on your level. Give it everything you've got. Don't go to bed leaving anything on the mat or in the cage or in the ring. Work out till you puke. I used to have to change clothes 3 times a day when I was working out because I would be soaking wet with sweat. But if you have a dream, no matter what it is, please follow it. Please educate yourself. Pay the extra dues, because the guys that are not paying the dues are going to be the ones sitting on the couch telling their wife, I could have done that, but I gained 60 pounds. Yeah. Don't be that guy. That's part of what's wrong with America. Come on, guys. We're the greatest nation in the world, and the only thing that makes us that is our people. Let's be the best people on the planet.
You heard it. I couldn't say it any better. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
It's my blessing, I assure you.
Yes, sir. All right, everyone.